All right, guys, we're going to jump into things here. So here we go. Next chapter. All right. We walked for a short time on the shore and contemplated the lovely scene. So he's with his new bride, Elizabeth, here. The wind, which had fallen in the south, now rose with great violence in the west. Suddenly, a heavy storm of rain descended. So, you remember that thing about foreshadowing in weather? Pay attention to this, okay? I had been calm during the day, but as soon as the night obscured the shapes of objects, a thousand fears arose in my mind. I was anxious and watchful, while my right hand grasped my pistol. What is it that agitates you, my dear Victor? What is it you fear? Oh, peace, peace, my love. This night and all will be safe, but this night is dreadful, very dreadful. You must retire, Elizabeth. I will rejoin you later. Victor. Well, that's what every woman wants to hear on her wedding night. This night will be dreadful of all others. Okay. She left me and continued some time walking up and down the passages of the house and inspecting every corner that might afford a treat to my adversary. So he inspects. But I discovered no trace of him. Ah, shriek! So he hears a scream. As I heard the scream, the whole truth rushed into my mind. Elizabeth! I fell senseless to the ground. When I recovered, I rushed towards her and embraced her with ardor. But the deadly languor of the limbs told me that what I now held in my arms ceased to be the Elizabeth whom I loved and cherished. The murderous mark of the fiend's grasp was on her neck, and the breath had ceased to issue from her lips. I happened to look up. The shutters had been thrown back, and with a sense of horror not to be described, I saw the figure most hideous and abhorred. He seemed to jeer, as with his fiendish finger he pointed towards the corpse of my wife. He eluded me, and with swiftness. I forgot to show you that he shoots at him here. So he takes his pistol and he shoots at him. All right. He eluded me and with the swiftness of lightning plunged into the lake. The report of the pistol brought a crowd into the room. We followed the track, but in vain. After passing several hours, we returned hopeless, most of my companions believing it to have been a form conjured up by my fancy, which means this is your imagination. I was bewildered in a cloud of wonder and horror. The death of William, the execution of Justine, the murder of Clerval, and lastly, of my wife. My father even now might be writhing under his grasp, and Ernest might be dead at his feet. I resolved to return to Geneva with all possible speed. My father and Ernest yet lived, but the former sunk under the tidings I bore, which means his dad just died under the sadness of the bad news. His eyes had lost their charm and their delight in Elizabeth, his more than daughter, whom he doted on with all affection, had gone. Cursed, cursed be the fiend that brought misery on his grey hairs, and doomed him to waste in wretchedness. He could not live under the horrors that were accumulated around him. The springs of existence suddenly gave way, and he was unable to rise from his bed, and in a few days he died in my arms. What then became of me? I know not. I lost sensation, and chains and darkness were the only objects that pressed upon me. I dreamt that I wandered in flowery meadows, but I awoke and found myself in a dungeon. They called me mad, and for many months a solitary cell was my habitation. I possessed by a maddening rage I was possessed by a maddening rage when I thought of the monster whom I had created, but my hate did not long confine itself to useless wishes. About a month after my release, I repaired to a criminal judge in the town and told him that I had an accusation to make. Sir, I know the destroyer of my family. I require you to exert your whole authority for the apprehension of the murderer. Be assured, sir, no pains or exertions on my part shall be spared to discover the villain. I thank you. Listen, therefore, to this deposition that I have to make. It is indeed a strange tale, but it is too connected to be mistaken for a dream, and I have no motive for falsehood. I now related my history with firmness and precision, marking the dates with accuracy. The magistrate appeared at first perfectly incredulous, which means this is crazy. But as I continued he became more attentive and interested. It is your duty, as a magistrate, to exert your whole power to seize and punish the being whom I accuse. I would willingly, but the creature of whom you speak appears to have powers which would put all my exertions to defiance. Besides, some months have elapsed, and no one can conjecture what region he might now inhabit. I perceive your thoughts. You do not credit my narrative, and do not indeed intend to pursue my enemy with the punishment which is his desert. My rage is unspeakable. You refuse my just demand. I have but one resource, and I devote myself either in life or death to his destruction. I broke from the house angry and disturbed, and retired to meditate on some other mode of action. My present situation was one in which all voluntary thought was swallowed up and lost. Revenge alone endowed me with strange and strength and composure. My first resolution was to quit Geneva forever. I found myself at the cemetery where William, Elizabeth, and my father reposed. The spirits of the departed seemed to flit around and to cast a shadow which was felt but not seen around the head of the mourner. By the sacred earth on which I kneel, by the shades that wander near me, by the deep and eternal grief that I feel, I swear, and by thee, O night, and the spirits that preside over thee, to pursue the demon who caused this misery until he or I shall perish in mortal conflict. I call on you, spirits of the dead, and you wandering ministers of vengeance, to aid and conduct me in my work. So she's borrowed a little bit from Shakespeare's Macbeth, Lady Macbeth here in this particular part, the wording here, which we're going to read next, by the way. Let the cursed and the hellish monster drink deep of agony. Let him feel the despair that now torments me. Ha 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 ha. I am satisfied, miserable wretch. You have determined to live, and I am satisfied. I darted towards the spot from which the sound proceeded, but the devil eluded my grasp. I pursued him, and for many months this has been my task. Guided by a slight clue, I followed the windings of the Rhone, but vainly. I took passage across the Black Sea in the same ship as I had saw the fiend enter, but he escaped amidst the wilds of Tartary and Russia, although he still evaded me. I have ever followed in his track. Sometimes peasants pointed the way, other times he left some mark to guide me. My life was indeed hateful to me. As I followed taunting messages carved in the barks of trees or in stone, I still pursued my journey northward. I procured a sledge and dogs, and thus traversed the snows with inconceivable speed, and now gained on him. When I appeared almost within grasp of my foe, my hopes were suddenly extinguished, and the ice split and cracked. I myself was about to sink when I saw your vessel riding at anchor and holding forth. to me hopes of succor and life. You took me on board when my vigor was exhausted, and I should soon have sunk under the multiplied hardships into a death which I still dread, for my task is unfulfilled. All right. When I appeared almost within grasp of the foe, my hopes were suddenly extinguished and the ice split and cracked. Okay, I'm going to go down to here. If I die, Walton, swear to me that he shall not escape, that you will seek him and satisfy my vengeance in his death. He is eloquent and persuasive, and once his words have even had even power over my heart. But trust him not. His soul is as hellish as his form, full of treachery and fiend-like malice. So basically, he's going to try to deceive you. Don't let him. All right, letter, August 26th. You have read this strange and terrific story, Margaret. Sometimes, so now we're back to the first frame, okay? So Captain Walton's writing to his sister again, but they're all going to kind of interact here in this next scene here. Strange and terrific story, Margaret. Sometimes seized with sudden agony, he could not continue his tale, which is connected and told with an appearance of the simplest truth. Such a monster has, then, real existence. Sometimes I endeavor to gain from Frankenstein the particulars of his creature's formation. Are you mad, my friend? Or whither does that your senseless curiosity lead you? Would you also create for yourself and the world a de- demoniacal enemy? Peace, peace, learn my miseries, and do not seek to increase your own. I have longed for a friend. Behold, on these desert seas I have found such a one. But I fear I have gained him only to know his value and lose him. I would reconcile him to life, but he repulses the idea. So he's still writing. This is him writing his letter still. I thank you, Walton, for your kind intentions towards so miserable a wretch. But when you speak, by the way, it's no accident that he's calling himself a wretch. Remember, he called the monster a wretch throughout the story. But when you speak of new ties and fresh affections, think you that any can replace those who are gone? Can any man be to me as Clerval was, or any woman another Elizabeth? Wherever I am, the soothing voice of Elizabeth and the conversation of Clerval will be ever whispered in my ear. They are dead, but one feeling in such solitude can persuade me to preserve my life. I must pursue and destroy the being to whom I gave existence, and then my lot on earth will be fulfilled, and I may die. The brave fellows whom I have persuaded to be my companions look towards me for aid, but I have none to bestow. It is terrible to reflect that the lives of all these men are endangered through me. If we are lost, my mad schemes are the cause. So he's realizing that they're in danger because they've been stuck in the ice. Letter. I mentioned in the last letter the fears I entertain for a mutiny. This morning, Captain, I have been chosen to insist that if the vessel should be freed, you promise to instantly direct your course southwards. You cannot refuse. What do you mean? What do you demand of your captain? Are you then so easily turned from your design? Did you call this a glorious expedition? And wherefore was it glorious? With the first imagination of danger you shrink away? Oh, be men, or be more than men. Do not return to your families with the stigma of disgrace marked on your brows. Return as heroes who have fought and conquered, and who know not what is it is to turn their backs on the foe. They looked at one another and were unable to reply. Retire and consider. I will not lead you further north if you strenuously desire the contrary, but I hope that with reflection your courage will return. Hey, Captain. The die is cast. I have consented to return. If we were not destroyed, thus are my hopes blasted by the cowardice and indecision. I come back ignorant and disappointed. It requires more philosophy than I possess to bear this injustice with patience. All right, so this is part of his letter here. September 12th. It is past. I am returning to England. I have lost my hopes of utility and glory. I have lost my friend. But I will endeavor to detail these bitter circumstances to you, my dear sister. And while I am wafted towards England and towards you, I will not despond. September 9th, the ice began to move, and roarings like thunder were heard at a distance. As the island split and cracked in every direction, we were the most in the most imminent peril, which means danger. But as we could only remain passive, my chief attention was occupied with the unfortunate guest, whose illness increased in such a degree that he was entirely confined to his bed. Hurrah! Yay! Hurrah! They shout because they will soon return to England. Do you do you then Do you then really return? Alas, yes. I cannot withstand their demands. I cannot lead them unwittingly to danger, and I must return. Do so, if you will, but I will not. You may give up your purpose, but mine is assigned to me by heaven, and I dare not. I am weak, but surely the spirits who assist my vengeance will endow me with sufficient strength. Saying this, he endeavored to spring from the bed, but the exertion was too great for him. He fell back and fainted. It was long before he was restored. The surgeon told me that my friend had certainly not many hours to live. At length he opened his eyes. Alas, the strength I relied on is gone. I feel that I shall now die, and he, my enemy, my persecutor, may still be in being. In a fit enthusiastic madness, I created a rational creature. He destroyed my friends, nor do I know where his thirst for vengeance may end. Miserable himself, that he may render no other wretched, he ought to die. Yet I cannot ask you to renounce your country and friends to fulfill this task. So now he's kind of hallucinating, just so you know, okay? The forms of the beloved dead flit before me, and I hastened in their arms. Farewell, Walton. Seek happiness in tranquility. So he's like dying here, and he's imagining his friends, and he's kind of like he's like seeing your life go before your eyes right before you die. Okay, all right. So interesting. A little side note here: the, whoever created this graphic novel has Shelley poems. Pierce Shelley was the guy that Mary was having this affair with, and got pregnant with children through. And so, anyway, um, he pressed my hand feebly, and his eyes closed forever, while the irradiation of a gentle smile passed away from his lips. Margaret, what comment can I make on the untimely extinction of this glorious spirit? My tears flow. My mind is overshadowed by a cloud of disappointment. Clump, that noise, a voice from Frankenstein's cabin. Great God! So the wretch has gone into the cabin on the boat. When he heard the sound of my approach, he sprung towards the window. Stay! This is also my victim. In his murder, my crimes are consummated. The miserable series of my being is wound to its close. O Frankenstein, generous and self-devoted being, what does it avail that I now ask thee to pardon me? I who irretrievably destroy thee by destroying all thou lovest? Alas, he is cold. He cannot answer me. The duty of obeying the dying request of my friend in destroying his enemy was was now suspended by a mixture of curiosity and compassion. Your repentance is now superfluous, which means it doesn't matter that you feel sorry now. If you had listened to the voice of conscience and heeded the stings of remorse before you had urged your diabolical vengeance to this extremity, Frankenstein would yet have lived. And do you dream? Do you think that I was dead to agony and remorse? He suffered not in the consummation of the deed. Oh, not the 10,000th portion of the anguish that was mine. Think that the groans of Clairville were music to my ears? It was torture, such as you cannot even imagine. So he's basically saying I was tortured when I was killing his friends, which sounds kind of shady to me. All right. Anyway, after the murder of Clairville, I pitied Frankenstein, but when I discovered that he darted to hopes for happiness, then I was filled with an insatiable thirst for vengeance. I knew that I was preparing myself for deadly torture, but I was the slave of an impulse and could not disobey. So basically, I was a slave to my impulses. Okay, I couldn't help myself. Yet when she died, nay, then I was not miserable. Evil thenceforth became my good. Urged thus far, I had no choice but to adapt my nature to an element which I had willingly chosen. The completion of my demoniacal design became an insatiable passion, and now it is ended. There is my last victim. Wretch, it is well that you come here to whine over the desolation that you have made. Hypocritical fiend, it is not pity that you feel. You lament only because the victim of your malignity is withdrawn from your power. Oh, it is not thus, not thus. Now, this is, you kind of have to see this picture to kind of get the whole picture. So I'm going to show it to you. Okay. So he's like a falling angel. This is an allusion to Lucifer being cast out of heaven. See the angel wings. Okay. So I need you to kind of get that whole picture there. I seek not a fellow feeling in my misery. No sympathy may I ever find. I am content to suffer alone, while my suffering shall endure. Once I falsely hoped to meet with beings who, pardoning my outward form, would love me for the excellent qualities which I was capable of unfolding. But now crime has degraded me beneath the meanest animal. No guilty no guilt, no malignity, no misery can be found comparable to mine. When I run over the frightful catalogue of my sins, I cannot believe that I am the same creature whose thoughts were once filled with sublime and transcendent visions of the beauty and majesty of goodness. But it is even so. The fallen angel becomes a malignant devil. So you see this allusion to Satan being cast out of heaven. Okay, I was an angel, now I'm a devil. He's saying it. Even that enemy of God and man had fiends, friends, and associates in his desolation. I am alone. So he's basically saying I've got it worse off than even the devil. Okay. You who call Frankenstein your friend seem to have knowledge of my crimes and his misfortunes, but he could not sum up the hours and months of misery which I endured. Am I to be thought the only criminal when all humankind sinned against me? Why do you not hate Felix, who drove his friend from the door with contumely? While why do you not execrate the rustic who sought to destroy the Savior of his child? Even now my blood boils at the recollection of this injustice. But it is true that I am a wretch. I have murdered the lovely and the helpless. I have devoted my Creator to misery, and there he lies white and cold in death. You hate me? But you abhor, but your abhorrence cannot equal that with which I regard myself. So you are disgusted by me, but you can't be as disgusted as I am about myself. Fear not that I shall be the instrument of future mischief. My work is nearly complete. Neither yours nor any man's death it needs to consummate the series of my being and accomplish that which must be done, but it requires my own. Do not think I shall be slow to perform this sacrifice. I shall quit your vessel and seek the most northern extremity of the globe. I shall collect my funeral pile and consume the ashes. This miserable frame that is that its remains may afford no light to any curious wretch who would create such another as I have been. I shall die. I shall no longer feel the agonies which now consume me, or be the prey of feelings unsatisfied, yet unquenched. He is dead who called me into being, and when I shall be no more, the very remembrance of us both will speedily vanish. I shall no longer see the sun or stars, or feel the winds play on my cheeks. Light, feeling, and sense will pass away, and in this condition must I find my happiness. But soon I shall die, and what I know now feel be no longer felt. Soon these burning miseries will be extinct. I shall ascend my funeral pile triumphantly and exult in the glory of the torturing flames. He's going to burn himself up, okay? The light of that conflagration will fade away, my ashes will be swept into the sea by the winds, and my spirit will sleep in peace. Or if it thinks, it will not surely think thus. So his plan is to burn himself up alive, okay? Farewell, I leave you, and in you the last of humankind whom these eyes will ever behold. Farewell, Frankenstein, blasted as thou wert, my agony was still superior to thine, for the bitter sting of remorse will not cease to rankle in my wounds, until death shall close them forever. He was soon borne away by the waves and lost in darkness and distance. Margaret, what can I say that will enable you to understand all that I should express would be inadequate? But I journey towards England, and I may there find consolation. The end. And that is the end.